Your intro music is amazing. You know that?
I know that. Welcome to the Fishing Guide
amazing.
Podcast. It's all amazing here. That's right, because we are in the house, literally in the house. And so, of course, Art's here. Art?
Yeah, I'm here.
There you go. And
Fishing.
Brandon Threadgill's here. He is the pro staff member for Rose Metal Products Trophy Graph System. So, mouthful, but we got it all in there. So, they don't charge by the word, thank God. So that's good.
Don't.
But so Brandon, we're down here. We're doing some crappie fishing. Let's just jump into crappie fishing. We're on the Alabama River. Tell us kind of the location and what we're kind of looking at.
Yeah, we're on the lower end. Most people call it Miller's Ferry area of the Alabama River. It's technically a lake, but it does have current. Had a little current today. It kind of pushed us back in some creeks. Made the bite a little bit slow, but it is what it is. You got to take it.
And word on the street is Art caught one.
Yeah, Art did catch one.
Can you confirm that?
Yeah,
He absolutely can.
And he caught it live scoping, didn't he?
Yes.
Yep.
So is that your first? Look at that. Is that your first fish?
No, I caught one live scoping last
But
time.
I mean that you saw. Like you saw the lure.
It was my
actually.
first big slab where everything lined up. Where I was using my feet on the top of the graph. I was lining in that lure.
Right.
And I was just ran right over, and she took it, and she made a big crucial mistake.
Yeah.
Now
Well, that was not here? That was here.
Yeah, that was here.
That was here. Your first one.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'll be darned. Usually we don't talk about virgins on our podcast, but tonight we have one. But it's good that you're not a rookie anymore.
No, I'm not.
So
I'm a sophomore.
there you go. Hey, you go out tomorrow, you might be a junior.
Yeah, I'll go and be a junior tomorrow.
You might be fishing against me next year.
That's right. Let's talk some about live scope fishing. Of course, you have Garmin, so we'll say live scope fishing. The other end of that is the active target or the Humminbird Live if it's available and you have it. But the other two units, we do know that there's plenty of them out there. So give us three tips to live scope fishing.
I'd probably say the first and most important tip is time. Time on the water. It's hard to replace time. Settings, minimal settings. I use minimal settings. All the extra stuff on LiveScope, I use as little as I can get away with.
Right. So you don't spend a lot of time, readjusting the settings that are factory set.
Low light settings, I add a little TVA. And then outside of that, pretty much everything's off.
Yeah. So explain a little bit about the adjusting of the settings. Today you talked about you have the new transducer, not the extended range, but the other one that they came out with. And so you have that on one of your graphs. And then the other graph, you still have your old transducer. Tell us the reason why you do that.
Yeah, well, my main one, the new transducer to me, I get a little more separation. So I use it on my trolling motor. That's my main transducer. That's what I use most of the time. The only thing really different I set settings wise on it is I run the ghost tree setting on auto.
Okay.
I don't do it on the old one. To me, it loses too much detail. I use the old one for if I'm in a heavy current or a heavy wind. It's separated from the trolling motor, so I could do spot lock and use it, and I can set it over there, and it don't move.
Right. And what brand? I know you have. What brand is that? So you have a separate holder.
It is a LS mounts.
Okay.
I just looked the guy up, seen it. It's a little small company, and it turned out to be better than what I really thought it was.
Just in case someone was wondering what you had. Third one, tell us about your rod length. So use two different rod lengths today when you were live scoping. That's probably should be your third tip. The reason why.
Yeah, usually I'm gonna try casting most of my fish.
Right.
Use a 6-foot H&H casting rod, C&M series casting rod as much as I can get away with it. Sometimes in these tight piles
Right.
or in brush, I'll go with the long rod because I get that distance. I can go straight in it. And sometimes you'll run into fish that don't want a bait moving,
Right.
and I'll go to a long rod so I can just set that bait on and keep it away from the boat.
So you had the opportunity to use almost the same exact rod that you were using, right? So you caught one, you caught some on a short rod, and you also caught some on the long rod, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we pulled up on a brush pile, and you could tell by looking at the LiveScope that they were all scattered through there.
Uh-huh.
And that's when Brandon was like, "Hey, we're gonna bust out some 10-footers and see if we can dip them."
Right.
And sure enough, we were able to dip a couple out of there.
Was that your first time with the long rod?
No, I've used a long rod fishing back home on Truman and Stockton before.
All right. So so we went in a bass boat today, special bass boat, because it's actually wrapped, isn't it? Tell us about that. That's your deal. That's your end right here.
Well, so we like Brandon. He's a pretty cool guy. We think he easily top 10 on the crappie circuit, multiple tournaments. So we're excited for 2023 because he's going to be fishing in the Crappie Elite Series, right?
Yep, it's brand new this year.
Brand new. And so we're excited to help him out with that. And he got our name on the side of a brand new 2022 Skeeter.
Right.
And we got our logo on there and trophygraphsystems.com. And we're excited about that. Try to drive some traffic to our new website that's coming out. So,
right. And let's just look at some of these mounts. I guess they're over on that side over there. So you are the expert, but guess what? He already has. So we have to break this down so you understand that you just didn't make him pro staffer and then he put the stuff on the boat. He actually put the stuff on the boat and then became a pro staffer.
Yes.
So afterwards, he had a little feedback into what he was looking for and back and forth. So you guys, and we'll get into that because that's where RMP, that's where you guys are, Trophy Graph Systems, are excelling at, is listening to their people, their consumers, which happen to be crappie anglers. Doesn't matter if they're crappie pros or if they're just weekend, crappie fishermen, just guys that are going out there. So tell us what you have on your boat and the reason why, in case these people are watching, they want to understand what they could do to have.
Well, this is the tall double mount.
Okay.
I have on my boat that gets that screen a little closer to you, and it's important.
Right.
To have that screen as close to you as possible without being in the way. You can get too tall.
Right.
And to me, it's a hindrance. But this mount actually, it's about the exact perfect height.
Right.
I couldn't imagine getting it any lower. Of course, now I run 3 graphs.
All right.
Instead of 2.
So you're running 3. How do you run 3 graphs on just a dual mount like that?
All you have to do is purchase a gimbal plate.
Okay.
And it basically just bolts on it, and you put your 2 graphs on the bottom and your 3rd graph on top.
So tell us what graphs you have and in what place so we can see that.
Use my main LiveScope graph
on
top because
how many inches?
It's 12.
Okay.
I run a 12 on top. My secondary LiveScope graph is a 12 also. It's
okay.
26 Ultra. And I have a 12 Helix for mapping.
Okay.
On this side.
All right. And that all sets up in front. And so now let's look at your back towards the console of the boat. You have some of that.
Hey, real quick, I want to mention something about these bow mounts. Is that these bow mounts are designed to fit over the recess pedal, and then also, like on Brandon's boat, they can also mount to the aluminum plate that is already there.
Okay.
So I just kind of wanted to share that a little bit.
All right. What else do you have?
This is the dash mount I'm running currently. And it's pretty simple. You can bolt a single graft to it in the middle.
We brought you just to hold the products right there. It's like Vanna White.
I was getting ready to ask you, what's that girl off that TV
that's right.
show?
So now that's who it is. So make sure you make all things, if you want to notify me about this show, make sure it all goes over to right there, Art at RMP. So, yeah, keep going.
Oh, no, I'm just, I'm getting in the flow here, Brad. So.
All right. So this is what he has on the console.
Basically, this is pretty easy, especially like on my Skeeter. It comes with a aluminum plate at the dash, so it's basically drilling 2 holes and bolting to the dash. Is what I done with it.
Okay, and then all right.
Of course, if you don't want just one graph, of course I run a 15. So these are nice because they're kind of short.
Right.
You can get them really low on the dash.
Okay.
Get that 15 mounted on.
That was the goal.
But you could add the gimbal plate to it. It's the same gimbal plate you add to the mount in the front.
Yep.
And you can spread out and have 2 graphs.
Okay. All right. So that works. So Art, tell us a little bit before we jump into some fishing lures, because we got to talk about fishing lures because we're talking about crappie fishing. Everyone wants to know what the crappie are biting on, and he's got some different lures to talk about, so we can find out some new ones. Tell them about the build of these, the construction of these. So they're not welded. Tell us some of the features of this. So
first of all, these are this is 100% American-made aluminum, and it's 1/4 inch, and it's a one-piece graph mount, and it's very rigid. As you can see, you've got 2 formed areas to increase the strength in it. And also, we powder coat them with a black UV powder coat because fishing guys are in the sun all the time.
Right.
But yeah, we're pretty much known for our one-piece aluminum graph mounts. That's kind of what we do. We make them right out of Springfield, Missouri. Yep. And we're excited.
All right. Well, let's hop over puddle jumpers. Let's talk about some lures. And let's also talk about today when we were fishing and you switched over, you made that transition into a different lure from the lure that you were using, Brandon. So tell us a little bit the reason why you're doing that, what you were seeing and why you did it and what you changed to.
Well, I like using plastic. Most of the time to me, a plastic bait is hard to beat. It's a real natural movement. But every now and then I run into fish just being picky and peculiar. And
right.
Sometimes a little bit of hair at the end, a little bit of that fine movement of that hair sometimes triggers fish. And,
I got you.
And that's all it's about. I'll swap. I might sit on a fish and swap 10 or 15 baits until I find the one that works. And sometimes you don't find the one that works.
Sometimes you got to move on.
Right. So talk about colors too. Of course, we're down here and the lake is not this lake is not the clearest lake there is in the United States. And so tell us a little bit about that. Yeah,
to me, color is not as important as profile. I will add color as the water gets dingier, just as a way for that fish to see you a little further out. If they're feeding good, I'll go black. I'll throw black and chartreuse all the time.
Right.
If they'll bite it. But sometimes you need to dial it back and get a little more natural. But to me, profile is more important than color.
Down here on the Alabama River, are you using some of the larger baits that they started coming out with? Maybe ones that are real popular at Grenada now that they're getting that 3-inch bait and some of those larger ones like, gosh, they just got all kinds of them out there. But the larger baits, a larger profile.
Yeah, I use a gator shad by Puddle Jumper. I use a lot, especially if I'm tournament fishing. I'm going for just bigger fish.
Right.
Sometimes them bigger fish seem to respond to that bigger profile bait better than they do a small one. And the gator shad is a shad size bait. It's 3 inches. It's pretty big.
So paddle tail or curl tail?
Well, it's got kind of
for you, paddle tail or curl tail. But you could only have one. and Art was fishing with you, and you wanted to use one that catches more fish than Art, which one would you use?
It would not be a curly tail.
All right. When would you use the curly tail?
Trolling, long line trolling.
Yeah.
About when I use curly tails. Outside
Right.
of that, I don't know that I've ever used a curly tail. Outside of trolling.
Oh. So not as much casting here, targeting, reeling back, or
I cast.
are you using?
I still just don't. I don't use curly tails casting.
Right.
I think that subtle movement. Sometimes you need a bait to go by fast without a lot of movement.
Right.
It triggers a response.
I see. So we've talked about colors. What do you think we've missed if you were to tell someone and how to catch more crappie? What is something that we haven't talked about that we should mention when it comes to crappie fishing? I know the one thing Art found out today with LiveScope is when he was casting, he was actually casting 150 feet out in front of the boat when the fish were only, and he never could understand why he never saw his lure on your screen, and it's because his 150 foot cast were well off of the setting of 40 foot that you had it on.
I'm gonna say probably if I had to tell anybody anything about crappie fishing to make you better.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot of debate over the last while about LiveScope, and there's people out there that hate it.
Right.
Is time on the water, and I will say I have learned more about crappie watching them on LiveScope
right.
than I ever could have learned, no matter how much time I spend on the water.
Yep.
So time on the water is important. I learn something every day with crappie fishing on the water.
Right.
So as much time as you can spend is probably the biggest thing to crappie fishing.
That takes us up to tackle time because tackle time sponsored by PICO Lures. Of course, they have a full line of soft plastic baits you can find there. They also have a line of hard baits. It includes the PICO INT deep diving crankbait, which happens to be the hottest crankbait right now you can get out there. So I'm pretty excited about having that product. But they also have some fishing tackle for bass lures or walleye fishing or white bass, striper, you name it. Any kind of game fish, they have it. You can check out their lures at picolures.com. If they wanted to find out more about Rose Metal products, trophy graph systems, where would they go, Art?
Well, I can tell you this much. I take great pride in, you can call me directly.
Right.
And I'll be more than happy to answer all your questions.
Like fishing tip questions? Or are you talking about graph questions?
No, I'm primarily talking about graph questions. Okay. Or I get a lot of fellas that call me and want real live measurements, because they're making sure when they buy our product that it is going to fit on their boat. You can find us at rmpstore.com under Trophy Graph Systems. Also, we're getting ready to release and launch our new trophygraphsystems.com website. Yep. That should be up and running here shortly.
Okay. And Brandon, if they want to check out more about you, social media, where would they check that out at?
Facebook is where I probably spend most of my social media time. I do have TikTok, and I do have Twitter, and I do have Snapchat, and all the other ones. So you can look me up pretty much on any of them, Brandon Threadgill, and I'll be there, and you can ask me a question or message me or whatever.
All right. Sounds good. Like I always like to end the show, make sure you keep your hook sharp and your lures in the water.